Willow bark. Cherokee healers were stripping it from riverbank trees and using it for fever and pain for centuries before any pharmaceutical company existed. In 1763, a British physician wrote a letter documenting indigenous use of willow bark for fever reduction, predating Bayer's aspirin patent by more than 130 years. The active compound that makes aspirin work comes directly from that bark. It is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now, rebranded, reformulated, sold back to you at a markup. If willow bark worked, what happened to the other four? That question is what pulled this whole story open. Because willow bark is not an isolated coincidence. It is the first thread in a much older system. And once you start pulling, the rest follows fast. There is a faded index card that started this particular trail, found in the back of a university archive box, handwritten in 2 columns, one in English, one in Cherokee syllabary, 5 plant names, 5 brief notes beside each one. No dates on the card itself, but the box it came from was cataloged in 1887. That number, remember it. Because 1887 is also the year a government-funded ethnobotanist started collecting plant knowledge from Cherokee communities in the southern Appalachians. His name was James Mooney. He worked for the Smithsonian Institution, and in 1891 he published a survey of Cherokee cultural and botanical knowledge that is still referenced by ethnobotanists today. It is a real document, publicly accessible. Cross-reference it against early American pharmacy journals, and something interesting starts to happen. The plants match, the uses match, but the pharmacy journals do not mention Cherokee healers. They just mention the plants. Stay with me, because this is where it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern. The plants are documented, the connection is real, but the credit line was quietly removed. Here is how willow bark works. Inside the bark is a compound called salicin. When it enters the body, salicin breaks down into salicylic acid. That acid reduces inflammation. It interrupts pain signals. It brings fevers down. The bark does what the pill does, not discovered in a lab, observed in a forest. And Cherokee healers were doing it generations before the 1899 Bayer patent that most people think of as the birth of aspirin. The bark was free, the patent was not. Now the second remedy, wild cherry bark. This one had the same quiet trajectory, observed in Cherokee and broader indigenous communities for cough and respiratory irritation, then absorbed into official American medicine without the full story attached. Here is the detail that matters. Wild cherry bark was listed in the United States National Formulary as late as 1955, not in a folk herbalist's pamphlet. In the official formulary, the pharmacist's reference book. Then it was quietly downgraded, not because new science disproved it. It was in the pharmacy. Then it wasn't, not forgotten by accident, replaced by something that cost more. The third remedy is almost funny in how visible it is. Mullein. Tall, silver-leafed plant grows in disturbed soil, roadsides, pastures, field edges. Cherokee communities used the leaves for chest congestion and lung complaints. So did Appalachian folk healers. So did early American settlers who learned it from the communities around them. Mullein appears in herbal guides from the 1800s, referenced across multiple states. It is not rare. It is not exotic. It is not controlled or regulated. There is a real chance it is growing at the edge of your yard right now. The remedy was never hidden geographically, only culturally. Now widen the frame. Cherokee plant knowledge did not exist in isolation. It traveled. It fed directly into Appalachian home medicine, into early American folk practice, into the first editions of the U.S. Pharmacopoeia. That 1820 Pharmacopoeia, the first official American drug reference, included plant-based entries drawn at least partly from indigenous knowledge, without attribution. The plants made it into the book. The knowledge holders did not. Then came 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act. Remember that year. The full weight of what it meant for botanical remedies is coming. But for now, just know that 1906 is the year the system began requiring that remedies prove themselves in ways that cheap, unpatentable, wild-growing plants had almost no institutional mechanism to do. Botanical remedies are cheap. They grow wild. Nobody owns them. and that made them a structural problem for a market that was just starting to understand the value of owning the cure. Not banned because they were dangerous, made marginal because they were free. Go back to the 1887 field notebook, the one I mentioned at the start, because it is not just a catalog of plants. When researchers began cross-referencing it against Mooney's 1891 published survey, they found something they were not expecting: a gap. The notebook contains entries for 2 additional plants that never appeared in Mooney's final published text. 2 plants, documented in the field, gone by the time the book reached print. What were they? And why did they disappear before anyone outside those archives ever had a chance to ask? The first missing plant turned out to be yarrow, Achillea millefolium. And the moment you know that name, the story gets bigger. Because yarrow is not a Cherokee secret. It is a wound herb that appeared independently across cultures on multiple continents. Cherokee healers used it, Greek soldiers carried it, Civil War field medics packed it into battlefield kits when surgical supplies ran out. The plant is literally named after Achilles. The legend says he used it to stop the bleeding of his soldiers' wounds at Troy. That is mythology. But the Civil War field guides are not mythology. Those are documented. And they describe yarrow the same way Cherokee healers described it: something you apply to a wound to slow the bleeding, something you drink as a tea to bring a fever down, something you use for digestive complaints when nothing more refined is available. 3 different cultures, 3 different centuries, same plant, same uses. This is not regional coincidence. When knowledge this consistent appears across that many independent traditions, it is not folklore. It is observation. Now go back to 1906, because this is the part that changes everything. The Pure Food and Drug Act created the first federal framework for regulating what could be sold as medicine in America. On its own, that sounds reasonable, but here is what followed. In 1938, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act expanded federal oversight further. Then in 1962, the Kefauver-Harris Amendment required that every remedy sold in America prove not just safety, but efficacy, through clinical trials, through institutional testing, through a process that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars even then. Botanical remedies, wild-growing, unpatentable, cheap, and widely available, had no pharmaceutical company willing to fund that proof process. There was no financial return on proving that something free actually worked. The law did not target the bark. It targeted everything that could not be patented. And Cherokee plant knowledge, already stripped of its attribution, already absorbed quietly into American folk medicine, became collateral, not destroyed, just made structurally impossible to defend within the new system. Here is the part nobody tells you. The suppression was not a meeting in a boardroom. There was no memo that said eliminate indigenous plant knowledge. It was quieter than that, and in some ways more complete. The system simply made it easier to sell a pill than to defend a plant. And once that structure was in place, it ran on its own. Now the buried proof object. The 1887 field notebook. The 2 missing plant entries. Researcher Daniel Moorman spent years building the Native American Ethnobotany Database, one of the most comprehensive cross-referenced archives of indigenous plant use in academic existence. When the notebook entries are compared against Moorman's database, the omission is confirmed. Yarrow is documented extensively across Cherokee and neighboring indigenous traditions in multiple independent sources. It appears in the field record. It does not appear in Mooney's 1891 publication. The gap is real. The most plausible explanation is editorial. The published survey had scope limits, space constraints, and decisions made about what to include. Maybe nothing more than that. But notice what the result was, regardless of the reason. The knowledge did not travel forward. Whether it was cut deliberately or cut carelessly, the effect was identical. It stayed buried. The 5th remedy is the one that will make you put down whatever you are holding. Echinacea. You have seen it. You have probably bought it. It is in every pharmacy, every grocery store, supplement aisle, every wellness shop in America. It is a billion-dollar industry. And here is what that industry was built on: In 1880, a traveling medicine seller named H.C.F. Meyer began commercially marketing echinacea as a remedy. His source for the plant's uses was indigenous knowledge, documented across plains and eastern communities, recorded in early ethnobotanical reports, observed and noted by anyone who spent time near the communities that used it. Meyer did not discover echinacea. He discovered that it could be bottled. The knowledge was always real. The question was always who profits from it. And today you can walk into a pharmacy, pick up a bottle of echinacea capsules for $30, and have no idea that you are purchasing a commercial version of something Cherokee and other indigenous healers understood long before the supplement industry existed to package it. So let's bring this back to your kitchen, your pantry shelf, your backyard, because that is where this story actually lives. Willow bark, the compound that became aspirin, used for fever and minor pain. Wild cherry bark, in the official formulary until 1955, used for cough and respiratory irritation. Mullein, still growing wild across North America, used for chest congestion. Yarrow, documented from the Cherokee tradition to the Civil War field kit, used for wounds and fever. Echinacea, now a billion-dollar supplement, built on plant knowledge that predates every bottle it comes in. You are not being given a prescription, you are being given back a vocabulary. This is historical literacy. Knowing what these plants were used for and why gives you context. It gives you options. It gives you the kind of household confidence that used to be ordinary knowledge before someone figured out how to charge for it. Aspirin came from the bark. The bark was free. Wild cherry bark was in the official pharmacy reference until it quietly wasn't. Mullein never moved. It just got forgotten while the culture around it shifted. Yarrow stopped 2,000 years of bleeding on 3 continents and then got edited out of a field notebook before most people ever heard its name. And echinacea is sitting in a blister pack right now with a price tag on it. That is the arc. That is the whole pattern. Free knowledge, observed over generations, absorbed without credit, regulated without resources, then repackaged and sold back at a margin. The kind of person watching this is not the kind of person who simply swaps one product for another. You are the kind of person who wants to understand why something worked before anyone told you it was supposed to. You notice the gap between what existed and what got passed down. And that instinct is exactly right, because the gap is real. Which one of these 5 do you already use, or have sitting in your cabinet right now without fully knowing what it does? Leave it in the comments, because the answers are usually more interesting than the question. And if you think 5 remedies is the whole story, it is not even close. There are 6 more plants in Mooney's original field notes that never made it into any pharmacy record, any published survey, or any supplement aisle. One of them was used for something modern medicine still has not fully solved. That one is next.